All right, today we're going to move into the part of Greek civilization called the Fateful Century.
Ooh, sounds like a little talking.
Yeah, and the first part of this is going to be review because we've already talked about it before, and that's the war with Persia. So it's not going to, don't think you're experiencing deja vu. You are simply hearing the same thing again, and maybe this time, it'll stimulate your brains to remember what you have learned in the past. So, we're going to begin looking at what happened with the Persian expansion. Remember that the Persian Empire spread west into Asia Minor, and it conquered the Lydians and the Greek colonies along the Aegean Sea. Many Greek colonists had come over from the mainland and settled in this part of Asia Minor, and they had established colonies there. They came under the rule of the Lydians and King Croesus. Remember King Croesus? What did King Croesus come up with?
The economy is a money system.
A money system. And what did he do where did the money come from?
Silver.
Yeah, okay. So how did it become money? All right, this is so easy that you're not getting it. He minted coins. Remember that? And then what did he do as an example of what we shouldn't do with coins, but we still do?
Shave them.
Yeah, shaved them, debased them. So King Croesus comes up again here. He was ruling over some of these Greek cities in Asia Minor. In 546, Persians took over this area, and so the Greek cities that are in Asia Minor now are under Persian rule. They did not like being ruled by the Persians, and so they attempted a revolt with the help of Greeks over here, their relatives over on the mainland. Well, at that point, mainland Greece came to the attention of the Persians. It's as if the Persians didn't even think about them. They conquered over here and didn't even think about, well, what's on the other side of the water. Sometimes it's best to fly under the radar, but the Greeks now came to the attention of the Persians. They realized, hey, there's people over there. They might be good to conquer. But more importantly, they wanted to get back at the fact that those Greeks had helped these colonies over here rebel against the Persian Empire. So a lot of tension. And so what happens is that Darius I put down that revolt over here, and then he turned his attention to punish Athens, and especially because Athens had helped them, those Greek colonies, to revolt against Persia. So you remember how Darius landed at the Bay of Marathon, and how the Greeks surprised the Persian army with a charge there and fierce fighting that brought the Greeks the victory. And here's some information about that battle. Things to note is that the Athenian army was about a third the size of the Persians. They had about 10,000 Athenians and around 1,000 Plataeans that were helping out. The Greeks managed to win by enclosing the Persians in a circle. What they did was they were strongest on their flanks. You understand the word flank? Have you come across that before? It's on the edge of the outside edges. And so they sent their troops on the flank to engulf the Persians on the Persian side and behind. And then as the Persians are fighting them, they reinforced the middle from those that were being victorious on the sides, and then pushed against the Persians. And the Persians had nowhere to go. There's nowhere to run because behind them was water. The Greeks then marched back to Athens to celebrate their victory. They came across another Persian force, which they defeated as well. And they were able to fight off the Persians. Here's a photo of the area, a map showing the Persian ships coming in here, then landing. They are in red here, the Greeks are blue, and you can see the stronger blue is here and here, and so they push the Persians in from the sides, and then they're able to keep pushing them back until they defeated them. They had nowhere to go. Now, as a result of this battle, word was sent back to Athens of the victory by a runner, and he ran the 25 plus miles to get there. And what happened when he delivered the news?
He died.
He died, right. Question?
Was it hard for him to run if that was true, with all that armor?
Probably. But these guys were in good shape, but he did die. So that tells you something, you know, of how arduous a task it may have been. Well, Darius was repulsed in his attempt to overtake Greece, and unfortunately for him, he died before he was able to try again. But his son Xerxes gathered together a great army a decade later and crossed the Hellespont on a bridge made of boats. You remember that? And this is going to lead up to the Battle of Thermopylae. Across the Hellespont, the narrow channel of water separating Europe from Asia, he constructed 2 bridges, each made of over 300 ships, tied together by a network of ropes. Now, he had overwhelming amount of soldiers, as you remember, as they passed before him in review. And so they land, intending to go through the pass of Thermopylae on down into the rest of Greece, past Marathon here, down into Athens. But they've got to get through this pass. And the Greeks are far outnumbered, but there are 300 Spartans, along with some others, that volunteer to defend this pass. And 300 of them against 1 million, or at least hundreds of thousands, of the elite Persian troops. Didn't seem to stand much of a chance, but because they were in a narrow area, they were able to hold off the Persian forces attack after attack. Led by King Leonidas, the Spartans heroically held the Persians at bay for nearly a week until, outnumbered, betrayed, and outflanked, they were finally defeated. Here is another close-up map showing the Persian camp. Even if you don't read this language, you can see Campamento Persiano. Here are the Greeks, here are the Spartans holding them off in this narrow way. Now the pass was not a mountain pass in that there are mountains on both sides like we usually think. Here are the mountains on one side, on the other side is water. So that presented a narrow area in which to try to get their troops. And as you remember, someone betrayed the Greeks and came over and told the Persians how to get around them. So they found there was a path up through the mountains and around, and the Persians went all the way around and came back, and now they were able to trap the Spartans on both sides and killed them all. Here's a picture of the mountainside of that pass. Here's the pass, and here's looking toward the mountains. And you can see how mountainous it is, rugged. There's a lot of trees there. It would be difficult. You could not get an army up through here unless, like, you knew a pathway up there that was shown to them. So the army has to pass through this. If you could turn and look the other way, and I don't have a picture of that, you would expect to have seen that water. But today that water is not there. It has receded. In fact, you can't even see the water. It's so far away. That happens often where lakes or rivers get filled in and harbors are no longer where they used to be because it's filled in with dirt. All right, so Leonidas and his heroic Spartans take a stand at Thermopylae. The regular troops got butchered. Second day, he sent in his immortals, but they were also beaten back. And then, of course, the traitor came along and told Xerxes how to get around. Leonidas sent everybody away except for his 300 Spartan bodyguards. They fought in a tight circle so the enemy could not break their formation. But they eventually broke through. All right. This shouldn't be here yet. Let's look at what's up here. Leonidas died fighting. Fierce battle was fought over his body. Persians pushed back 4 times. Arrows finally killed the last Spartans. The body of Leonidas was beheaded and crucified. And the bravery of those men is still looked back on today. Now, interesting, during World War II, there was a battle that took place in that same pass. The British were the outnumbered soldiers that were holding off the Germans coming through. They eventually were surrounded and overwhelmed as well. And here's a picture of King Leonidas, a painting of Leonidas. Here's a monument to King Leonidas at Thermopylae. Here's a monument to 700 Thespians who died at the Battle of Thermopylae. Those would be others that were there with the Spartans. Before the battle, a Spartan was told about the great number of Persian soldiers who with their arrows would conceal the sun. So many soldiers on the Persians that when they shoot their arrows, it blots out the sun. His response was, so much the better, we will fight in the shade. Shows you the attitude the Spartans had. So here's the Battle of Thermopylae once again. Having broken through then, the Persians are heading down to Athens. And as you remember, they came down to Athens, burned down the city, but most of the inhabitants had gone over to the island of Salamis, where they felt relatively safe. But and they still had the Athenian navy was still there, but the Persian navy was so much bigger and stronger. But that takes us to the Battle of Salamis Bay. According to Herodotus, the Greek historian, Themistocles sent his slave Sisinus in a boat to Xerxes, where he delivered this message. The general of the Athenians sent me without the knowledge of the other Greeks, for he is on your side and wants you rather than the Greeks to win. To say that they are afraid and planning to run for it. You can now achieve a brilliant coup if you don't sit by and watch them run. They are not in agreement among themselves, and so will not oppose you. Their naval battle, as you will see, will be against each other, those on your side and those not. Now, Themistocles is believed to have made Sisinus a free and wealthy man for his efforts, because he was acting as a spy, as a double agent, if you will. He was going to Xerxes and giving him false information. So that gave Xerxes the confidence to come bring his fleet down and attack the Greeks, largely Athenians, that were in the Bay of Salamis. So he was deceived into bringing his large ships into the small area of that bay, where he would then be at a disadvantage against the smaller ships of the Athenians. Here is a picture drawing of an Athenian trireme, called that because there are 3 rows of oars on the boat. It's a little better drawing. On top of the boat, or above the rowers, there were 30 infantrymen. These infantrymen would then, if the ship got close enough to an enemy ship, would jump over to the other ship and fight them. The one problem they had, though, was that they were wearing bronze armor. And I lost my place as to how much it weighed. Let's see. Anyway, I think it was like 40 pounds of armor, something like that. So why would that be a problem in that situation, Bill?
You would sink them.
Yeah, if they are jumping from one ship to another and they miss, or if they get knocked off, They go in the water, they're not going to survive because their armor's going to drag them to the bottom. But I guess they figured having armor was better than not if you're going to be in a battle. All right, here's where the battle takes place then, in the Bay of Salamis. Here are the Persian ships that have come into the bay. Here are the Greeks. Eventually the Persians are going to try to go this way, escape, but the Greeks are going to have the best of them. Here's another drawing of a Greek Athenian trireme. You can see that on the front they have these things to try to ram an opposing ship, put a hole in it so to sink it. Here's a drawing of the battle itself. Here are the Persian ships, so many more than the Athenians, and so much bigger, but the maneuverability was a problem. And so the Greeks were victorious as Xerxes was watching from a nearby hill, and he saw his ship being sunk and defeated. So he returns home and leaves some troops there who are then put into battle against a group of Spartans, particularly, along with some other Greeks that are following them, the next year at the Battle of Plataea. And Persians were utterly defeated, and that put an end to the Persian invasion. Herodotus described this battle as the finest victory in all history known to me. So that's pretty high praise. The effects of the Persian War on the Greek Empire were this. The Athenians felt that the Persian War was a defining moment in their history. They pointed to that and said, that's really where we came of age. The victory made Athens one of the strongest city-states in Greece. Well, their chief rival, Sparta, had lost 300 of their best. And so Athens kind of took over the leadership of Greece. Wealth followed with the power as Greece gathered lots of money and riches from the war. Many states started looking toward Athens for help, as opposed to Sparta. The alliances that Athens made after the victory, as well as the Delian League, which is the league of cities that they would ally themselves with, would catapult it into immense power. This power made Athens the cultural center of the Greek world. Everything now was about Athens. The Spartans grew increasingly frightened of Athenian power and suspicious of their intentions, because they always thought Athens is going to try to get us. Although Athens had this great amount of power, it would also cause their downfall, as we'll see. This would eventually lead to the Peloponnesian War, the war between Athens and Sparta. Now, as Athens has become so dominant in Greece, it leads us into what's called the Golden Age of Greece. And in this Golden Age, the Greeks are led, and particularly Athens is led by a leader by the name of Pericles, who we'll talk about later. A number of the citizens of this time period would become some of the most famous who ever lived. In fact, I dare say you've probably heard of almost all of these people. And it comes from this one short time period, which we call the Golden Age of Greece. Herodotus. How many have heard of Herodotus? I just mentioned him a few minutes ago. He's considered the father of history. Now, his history is not always reliable. He sometimes exaggerates, sometimes makes stuff up. But he is considered the first person who is an historian, who writes down history. You have Hippocrates. How many have heard of Hippocrates? Yeah, you've maybe even heard of the Hippocratic Oath that doctors have to take. He's considered the father of modern medicine. I'm sure you've all heard of Socrates, right? Great philosopher. We're going to look at him more in detail later, as well as his pupil, Plato, also philosopher, and his pupil, Aristotle. We'll talk about them and what they believed later on. Then probably the only one you haven't heard of is Demosthenes, and he was considered one of history's greatest composers of oration, in other words, speeches. He was a speech writer and a speech maker. And so it's amazing. These guys are all during this same short time period of Greece's golden age. Now, next in your notes, you have a section entitled The School of Greece. And I don't have that on a slide for us. But the key word here for the School of Greece is excellence. They pursued excellence. That's what we try to attempt on our school here too. But they pursued it with a vengeance. And their education was something that took place in a number of different areas. The first area that you have in your notes there is the area of thought. As a city, a culture becomes prosperous, they have more time to sit around and think. And so thought is a major part of this, as you can see by the philosophy that is entered into by the three most famous and others as well. So thought is a key element of the school of Greece. Secondly is art. Again, if you have leisure time, that's when people begin to be involved in art. Next is science. There are a lot of scientific discoveries. There's a lot of venturing into science during this golden age of Greece. And then there's literature. Much literature is written. Great Greek literature. And that relates to drama. They not only wrote literature, but they performed literature. They wrote plays and they performed plays. That becomes a very prominent part of Greek culture, is the performance of plays. And so everywhere where the Greeks influenced other cities, other countries, they would build theaters to put on plays. And then lastly is architecture. Greek architecture that we see evidenced in buildings like the Parthenon. And that not only was a style, there are several different Greek architecture styles, not only influenced Greece, but they've influenced our world to the present day. You can still find Greek architecture in our country, for example, in Washington, D.C., and other places. So all these areas of the school of Greece have influenced us to the present day. It was a tremendous time. Okay.
Which letter?
That was drama. Any others? Now, the government of Athens had developed to being a democracy. This is where we find the first democracy in history. Now, their democracy was limited. It wasn't everybody could vote. It was every adult male citizen. So those are three restrictions. You have to be an adult, you have to be a male, and you have to be a citizen. And that wasn't even half the population, but it was a greater percentage than anybody else had. And it was a greater attempt to involve the people that were living there in their own government than anyone else had ever attempted. So every adult male citizen of Athens could vote and hold office. Go.
Wasn't that how it used to be in America?
No.
I thought it was.
It's gone the other way around. In America, we started out as a republic. That was how we were
I
established.
mean, like, voting. Like, only males.
you're talking about that part of it.
Yeah.
Adult males, yes. Property owners would
Okay.
have been originally. Yeah. Okay. Tomorrow we're going to begin looking at the war that takes place between Sparta and Athens, the Peloponnesian War. In the time we have left today, I'm going to give you to work on your assignment for tomorrow, which is to read pages 57 to 60, only a few pages to read. Take notes of anything that may not be in your notes already, and do the section review on page 60. You do not need to write any complete sentences this time. All right, everybody have the assignment, and now you have some time to work on it.
How far do you want to